reason why we are here. We are going to talk about the cloud, and of course, we are talking about the Microsoft cloud. And to narrow it down, I'm going to talk about typical infrastructure-related stuff. Right, that's the conference. So we have some typical gateway teasers, or maybe gateway drugs. You start with the gateway drugs, and you go to the more heavy stuff, like the Azure something. So a typical teaser, and a lot of you are already there. It's Office 365. Okay, that's just Office. Yeah, but still you need Azure Active Directory to use it. So you are most likely facilitating a lot of Azure-related stuff already. Most of you are. So we have the data center extensions, we have high availability, and we have Asha Remote App and Azure Backup as typical gateways that are quite easy to start up and a good way to begin your journey to the clouds if you are not already there. But before we go to the teasers, we are going to see the tools for the road. We have a well-known deployment tool already available that a lot of you will know from before. We have the assessment and planning toolkit. How many have used the map? Yeah, most likely you used it during Windows XP to Windows 7 deployments, stuff like that. But it have been building up and getting more and more feature and better parts. We have also the Azure Cost Estimator tool because it's important to know, will we make money going to the cloud? And it's not said that you will save money going to the cloud, but it can give you something else. And then you need to know exactly, is this a cost question? Can we save money? Or is it a feature question? Or what else is it in this for me? Why should we do it? So we need to take a time to check it out in the beginning. As IT pros, we always read white papers. We might actually go to a nice conference like, for instance, NIC, to learn something about the cloud. And we should always try to make a POC, a proof of concept. So before we start using stuff, we should test it out, because there are enough projects that actually figure out that we need to use Azure remote applications. Let's implement it. And after implementing it, they suddenly stand with a solution they cannot use for anything at all. So we actually need to test out, does it contain the feature we want for the price that we are willing to give for it? And will it fit our needs? So let's start with the first tool, the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. Instead of just talking about it, we just jump into the demonstration in a few seconds. Because we have two main toolkits we are going to use. We have the online calculator for prices, but that's heavy and hard to use. But we have the assessment and planning toolkit that you install on something, a server, a computer, and analyze the real life scenarios. It's not something that you just sit down and figure out that, yeah, we need that server, and it need to be like this. We actually need to calculate how much CPU usage, how much data transference will happen, and so on. And we have the cost estimator tool. When we know what and how much, we can actually figure out the cost. So let's start with a quick demo about the tool. This is an assessment and planning toolkit where I already have run it at a small customer. And gotten some results I'm going to show you. But first I'm just going to show how easy it is to install it. You just install the MSI file. You connect with either an existing database server or you create a free database server and you're good to go. And the cool thing is actually when you download it, you get a Microsoft official course, lookalike course. So you can actually sit down and use a manual that's built as a course with labs. This is how we set it up, and you can download the pre-defined SQL demo database, so you have data to play with, so you don't have to do anything before you start to learn how to use the tool, and you have a detailed course that will take you 3-4 hours to go through it. It's quite extensive because you can use this for cloud readiness, Windows deployment, upgrade to Windows 10 from Windows something, server, virtualization, move VMware to the cloud, you move SQLs to one database, and so on. So you can use a lot of stuff in here, but the course is made in modules, so you just select what you want to do. So I will start just by running a collect inventory data. I will do it on a Windows computer, and you can see we can do it on Linux, Unix, VMware, devices, Exchange, Endpoint, SQL. It's a big list. So I go for the Windows computer. One strange thing is actually you can run it against VMware, but you cannot run it against Hyper-V. Well, you can, but instead of analyzing it like Hyper-V, you should analyze it as computers, because you get more detailed information if you analyze it as computers, not as running VMs. So that's the best way of doing it. You will also see on the another demonstration later that's the best way of doing it. So I manually enter computer name and credentials. Create a credential that will be Demo Olav. That's Demo Olav or Demon Olav. Depends on the mood, right? Save it. Credential order and the computer create. The computer I'm looking for is Mr. T. Use all computers credential. Save. Next. Scan. And then it will select the VMI query against my computer and come back with the result. Collection remaining, total machine discovered 1. Down here I can go down and see the different scenarios, Azure VM readiness, Azure VM capacities. Azure VM capacity is the next cool part, because the first thing is that we actually get an overview of how many machines we have that are ready, how many machines we have that need to do something before they are ready. That might be because some of them actually are the wrong version of Windows, so it's not supported in Azure. So you need to upgrade 2008 to 2008 R2. That's my problem here. So I know actually that I can move them over to the cloud. So that's nice. I need know what I need to do, and we also have the generate. Oh, something is. Let's try that one again. No, it don't want to go there. Generate Windows Azure VM readiness report. So I can generate a report. That's a quite easy Excel sheet. Open, and we have an Excel sheet telling how many machines we had, how many was ready, Windows machines, what was the problem. You cannot run SQL Express, you need to upgrade it. And it was also a 2008 computer, not a 2008 R2 that needs to be the minimum. So it's quite easy report. It could be Linux machines and so on if you run it on different systems. So it gives us quick overview of what should we do next. And then the next fun part is actually the Azure VM capacity, because the VM capacity will actually analyze over time the usage of our computers. So it will come down with an idea that you actually need to install 1 A6 Azure computer, 2 large virtual machines, 3 small virtual machines, and so on. So you will get every computer single instance in here. And of course, you can generate a report, so you have something useful for later. Capacity there. Same thing, sizing result. You should size it this size. You can even sort it to see what number of A6 do I need. I need one ASICs, running time, data, and so on. So with a quick free tool from Microsoft, I have actually figured out that yes, all my 9 computers can be put into Azure, but 10, but I need to do something with 2 of them before I do anything. But still, I should take some time and consider that it was telling me that I had a SQL Express, maybe I have more SQL servers, so maybe I should use SQL Azure in SQL instead. Or maybe I should consolidate. So before you move everything that, like the report say, you should actually sit down and figure out, is there something I can do to make this more efficient? Should I collect all my database on one server? Yes, of course, if you can, you should try, because it will be cheaper if you can cut out 1, 2, 3 computers and make only one maybe a bit stronger, but you still don't have to pay that much money. So you need to sit down and plan, even though the tools are great. You need to sit down and plan. And then we have the gateway to the clouds. What's the reason for us to start cloud now? We will start with what's our base mission. We as technicians, why are we here? Why are we doing our job? And it's quite easy actually, because the cornerstone of our missions are data. We have data that we need to give access to something called users, right? We have some users that need access to our data so they can do their job and what they are being paid for. And we need to use applications that can access the data. And the stupid users have their tools, and they want to use their tools no matter what, if it's a robot stuff, it's on a fruit stuff, or if it's a guitar. We need to make sure that the user can use their favorite stuff, to use their favorite application to collect our data in a safe manner, so we actually can protect what we have. So we need to start now to think about how can we protect our data. We have different layers. We have the Azure Active Directory to stand for the authentication of the users. You will see a lot more of Azure Active Directory later today, I think, at least tomorrow. So we need to authenticate the users based on our domain at the on-premises solution, maybe to connect Intune, to connect to Office, and I think it's about 3,700 other vendors and applications that support Azure Active Directory as authentication. So we can set it up and we can use it all around. And then we are in charge of our user's password and when they are denied access. So if somebody, for instance me, quit the job, I will actually lose access to other stuff because I'm not working for that company anymore. And that's a big security thumbs up. We will also figure out that we have users, we have devices, and we have data we need to protect. The combination of Enterprise Mobility Suite, that's another cloud feature that everybody should look into, is that we can secure the device by using Intune. We can secure the authentication and the user by using identities in Azure Active Directory and tools around it. And we can use RMS to make sure that only users on trusted devices are allowed in trusted ways to access the data. We need to think about the main mission we have. It's protect the data in the same time as users can actually use it. It's easy enough to protect data. It's hard to make sure that it's used in a safe way. And that's one of the biggest benefits by using Intune. I know there are a lot better MDM systems than Intune, but they are not integrated in RMS systems. They are not integrated in Azure Active Directory and so on. So even though you can get more functionalities, when you are looking just on the MDM, you will lose functionalities because you didn't think about the EMS package. And then the EMS package is a bit like Led Zeppelin, right? Robert Plant, yeah, he gives out some good songs. The other guys in Led Zeppelin, yeah, they have done something funny, but it's not Led Zeppelin, right? So we need the entire package of enterprise mobility suite to work together to create the good rock and roll music. So that's the reason why I prefer Intune before other, because they are better integrated in the next level of protection of the data. So we have also the cost estimator tool. The cost estimator tool is a tool that are free for download, and it kind of looks a bit like the calculator, online calculator, but it is of course much better. Let's go into the cost estimator tool. Also here, you actually have the benefit of scanning your environment. I can go in here and I can scan a virtual machine manager system, a Hyper-V manager system, a vCenter system, or a physical machine. Let's go in and select this physical machine. I think it will work with this one. The Olav. And the password. Add it. Oh, it didn't like that one. Let's see, why not? We can just add something. It will of course not run now, but I will just get up the next. I think it's trying to reach it. Let's see. Okay. The next part of the scan is how long do you want the scan to go? And how often in that time do you want to scan it? So typical, I set it up with about, let's write it once more. Like that. No. Another content. Typical, you want to scan it for at least a couple of days. So you have the most current for a longest time that the computer have changes in the usage. Just start it once more. It doesn't like that I'm not connected to a network, I think. So then you select, for instance, you don't run it from Friday afternoon to Sunday, because it will not give you a good example. But when it collects, it will actually collect the log files of data transmitted the last 31 days. So even though you take a one-time scan, it will actually give you the data transferred from and to this server for the last 31 days, if it had been running for 31 days. So you will get something, but not that detailed. If you take it for Monday to Friday, for instance, and scan it every second hour, it will get more fresh information and usage patterns. So it's easier to say that this computer should have been so and so and so. Let's go in and see some of the scenarios. I don't have any scenarios here now, but I can create scenarios by going into services, or I can go into my scenarios and import scenario, where I had make some typical assessment when I'm at the customer site. We know that the customer might want to just put some AD domain controllers in the cloud, because they are going to synchronize it with with Azure Active Directory. And to make sure that you have the best possible uptime, you put it in the cloud, near Office, near the user's logon, and near the authentication. So you just want 1 or 2 domain controllers and the Azure Directory synchronization server. So then I create a template for that. I also created a template setting up an ADFS, so you have the single sign-on solution for your users, and I also want that to be in the cloud instead of locally. We will see why I want it in the cloud later. So this is an ADFS solution. I can go in and select Edit, and I can change money to be, oh, I cannot change it here right now. I can say change location, I can see the data. I'm not sure why I'm not allowed to change. I need to put it in the cost estimator. Yeah. So here we have what I need. I need one A1 Azure computer. I need one A1 more. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we want to be redundant. So we just put in whatever we need of sizes of the computer. And do you remember my last scan? I actually was told that I need an A6, A5, and so on and so on. So I can actually take the scan I did, go in here, and estimate the price. So I can figure out that it will cost me that much to put it in the cloud. Quite easy. I can go into a cost estimate, new cost estimate, and create a new one. I want to add services like this. Oh, services like this. I'm looking for remote app. I want to use remote app. No, it's not updated with the all the 4 types, but go for a basic. We want it located in Europe West. We have 25 users. Figure out they will use it 745 hours, and we will then get a price for the job. So it's easy to just add whatever you need and get a final cost. Now I actually added into the scenario here, I think, instead of creating a new one. It is located remote app on the top here, so we can see the price, and it will give you the price in Norwegian money, in Swedish, in pound, euro, and so on. But it's just my template that was created a little bit wrong. Sorry for that one. But when you create it, you can change location, and you can change the price, and you will get the cost that it actually are supposed to be. You can add stuff like, since this is an ADFS, I might actually want to pay to have the IP addresses instead of using the built-in. Then we can just go into network, IP address. I need 4 IP addresses. I need them in Europe West, reserved, and add to ADFS. So it's easy to get the total picture. First the scan, and then the calculation. And then we can actually sit down and say, this is what it actually will cost us to implement ADFS in the cloud. Cool, right? Yeah. So then the next thing will be typical data center extension. We actually did a data center extension process now, but we have data, so why should we extend our data center? Well, it might be because we're needing a developer environment, or we need better routines on our developers. And in Azure, you actually have platforms created for developers with version history and everything you need. And that's quite costly to build up in your data center. So we can maybe develop something, and when we have developed something, we create the customer system. So we don't want the customers to go into our data center, so we put it out in the cloud. And the next thing is maybe we have the need for more powerful data analysis of some kind, but we don't have the resources to put it in our own data center. why not put it out? At some time, maybe we should consider to move everything from the data center out to the cloud. But that's not something you do overnight. You need to figure it out, do it slowly. If you are a new company, I have started up for new companies where everything was in the cloud, and that was cool. They only had a router and switches. That was their entire data park. They had one printer, of course, so they can print out stuff, but they didn't have any server at all. Because there was a new company, they ended up being a couple of hundreds employees, but there was no legacy limitation that made it need to be created locally. So you can go totally to the cloud, but most likely you will go step by step. Another good reason for going to the cloud is that you want functionalities that are very expensive, and you need the knowledge of how to use that features. So it could be something simple as you want to make sure that all your data will survive if one of your server crashes. Okay, then you can set up a cluster, or you can set up Hyper-V with replication and so on, but it's quite expensive. If you use the local Azure data center, your data will actually be on 3 different computers. And you can select geographically to pay a little bit extra, and then it will be on different data centers. And that's expensive if you're going to do that at your own data center. So geographically, we can have a copy of our data center other places in the world. We can have backup of our running data center on premise in Azure, ready to take over if something happens. Or we can just set up replication from a website, make it available both in Europe and in Asia, and it replicates behind, and you don't have to have poor relay from Asia to Europe or the other way around. Another thing that people not do too much thinking about is a network load balancer. How many here uses network load balancers? Citrix? Yeah, a lot of you. And you need them, but they are expensive and can be hard to manage. In Azure, it actually are just there. You don't pay for it. You just set across and it works. So that's quite more cost efficient, and you don't have to learn anything. And it's just simply there and it works. The site recovery is exciting because then you have your entire site replicated to a cold site in Azure. So if anything happens, you can just switch over to Azure, or you can have site to site in Azure as well. An easier way to go over to the cloud is the Asha Remote App. Almost everybody have some kind of remote app functionality. They have Citrix, they have terminal services or something like that. Terminal services, that sounds really bad because it's terminal, but maybe you survive anyway. So the remote app functionality is actually a way to put that functionality into the cloud. And you have 4 tiers you can use. You have the basic, standard, premium, and premium plus. The difference here is power and price, of course. If you have the basic, you have a quite cheap solution with less than €9 per user and 40 hours included, and €15 as the maximum for a month. So it's a quite low cost solution for, if you compare it to Citrix or even terminal services that are quite terminal and not that expensive, but you can add on all the cost with extra license and so on. The difference is that basic and standard will demand 20 users. So for a small company, you still have to pay minimum of 20 users. Announced late last year, they actually built it out with Premium and Premium Plus. That only need 5 users, but it's more expensive, but it's more powerful. The difference are actually that it all runs on A3 Azure machines, but you get fewer users per machine. So if you go for the Premium Plus, you will only have 2 users on a running VM. So it's quite powerful because we have set up solutions where we tried standard and it was 10 users on a VM, and the application was too slow because it was using a lot of CPUI. So when they released Premium Plus, suddenly it was only 2 users on that computer. A little sad thing is that the VMs run on different hardware. Some are Intel, some are AMD, some are Xeon, and so on. So you can actually get a better A3 sometimes than other times. So you can still discover that it's not using, it's not that powerful that it was last time you logged on, because you are now running on an AMD instead of a for Intel Xenon CPU. The remote app itself is quite cool. You will have the Asha Remote App on all major platforms, major platforms. So on your iPad, you can connect to it and use it, no problem at all. What I like about the new PC version is actually the thing I've highlighted here. You have the find all your apps in the start menu, all apps list. So if you log on once and save your credential, it will actually show up as locally installed. It just connects like all terminal services application you have published on your local system. So just let's go in and see how it looks. Oh, it's closed. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong link. Oh. Let's do that one more time. Manage Windows Azure.com. You still need to use the old portal. You cannot use the new portal yet. They are in the process of porting it. So. You can use a cloud only or a hybrid solution as well. You can create a terminal services via VM that contains all your application and upload it and connect it to your domain and use it like it was an ordinary terminal services system, RDP system. Or you can create an independent pre-created image with Windows and some of the stuff that you need automatically in it, and it will be updated and everything will work fine, and that's the cheapest version. But if you only need it for some reasons that are fulfilled in here, let's see, we have the remote app, the NIC app setup, and we can go in and we can publish remote programs, and we can add users. And this is it actually take you less than 20 minutes to get a proof of concept up and running on the easiest way. I have done the first part, but I can go in on the publishing part and see that we have published some application. Okay, I want to publish more, just push the publish, and you can publish using path or publish using menu program. So if you have an application that doesn't show up in the menu on the image you have created, you can just create a path to it. So let's do the menu programs. It goes in and analyzes everything that's on the menu, and of course we want to run PowerShell, right? PowerShell easy, and add it, and it will then appear on the list soon. Successfully published. Okay, PowerShell. So then we have added the application. So as long as the application is in your image, the image need to be sysprep, and then you upload it, and everything that's in it can be used. It starts up, it can connect to your domain, so it's a member of your domain if you want it to be a member of your domain, and it's ready to use. You just need to go in give user access. And user access can now be my domain in Azure here, the Tvedt domain, or it can actually be just anybody that have some address with Microsoft ID. Let's take my father-in-law, for instance, like that. Okay, he's added. Now he can actually log on and use Office and PowerShell. My father-in-law just loves PowerShell, right? Now he can even run it on his iPad. So that's how easy it is to publish, set up, and you can scale it out. I need to save. It will auto-scale, and you can also create script to run the scaling. But it's basically down to the number of users. It's 2 for the premium, and so on and so on. So that's the main thing. But if the second user logs on, it's still on the same computer. If the third user logs on, it will start a new computer in a matter of seconds. And we can upgrade, downgrade, and so on. So the interface is quite easy. You can just create Azure. In Azure, you create your template, sysprep your template, and upload it in here, so it's quite easy. On the client side, we have the Asha Remote App. This is the client, and it will look basically similar on iPad, Android, or stuff like that, where you sign in, and you can have more invitations, app invitation. Like you can see here, I have work resources, and I have Internet Explorer invitations. 2 different invitations for my user. Done, and this is the application I will see here. I think it's need to be refreshed. I haven't saved my password because I use it for different stuff. Like that. So a refresh should soon, yeah, PowerShell is there. So we added PowerShell. And if we go down here, all apps, new app, down to the work resources, there we find everything. Isn't that cool? That's make it quite more easier to put your application in Azure, right? Because you use it like it's a local application. So if I start it from down here, like that, I need to run the calculator, and you will get the problem that you always get with remote access. The first time you connect the server, you need to authenticate the machine, and so on and so on. So it's quite slow on the first part. But after the first part, so when you start the second application, it will go quite fast. So it's just ordinary stuff you will discover even in your own room. So let's just put this one up, show details. Now it's just as suspected. It logs on the user, and wow, you can use your calculator, right? Cool. Start the next application. We will see that it runs up much faster. For instance, let's start Excel. Oh, it should be just around the corner. This one don't need to run at all. You don't need to run the app more than once, because it will remember it when you close the app. It will remember the connections. So it's up and running. I have logged on with my account, and it's ready to use Excel from the cloud. So no matter what device, you can get the full experience. Think about combine this with RMS and stuff like that, so you can use devices that are approved and maintained by Intune, and you get access to SharePoint because you are on an approved device, and so on. So it's quite cool. Another thing that could be tempting, need to speed up a bit, is the Azure Backup. The Azure Backup have changed a lot. The first version of Azure Backup was used for Windows Server Backup, where we install an agent, and it took backup to Azure, and you did 1 agent per server. And then they expanded to use Azure Virtual Machine, where you can actually take backup of what Microsoft already are taking backup of, but you can decide how long you want to keep it, and you have the control of restore and so on. The final thing, this is the client you use on the computers. The final thing that they have released now is the Azure Backup Server. So you can actually install a server, and to be honest, it is System Center Data Protection Manager with a twist. So it's just the same way as Data Protection Server, but it's free. You just pay for the backup. So you install it without paying System Center licenses, and you take backup to the cloud or to a disk and then to a cloud. And that was the part that was missing in the previous version. You took backup to the cloud, and then you need to restore a VM from the cloud. Okay, good luck with that. It will take you 7 hours before you have restored it. Now you have a local backup, and you have it in the cloud if your local backup fails or something horrible happens. So now the next guy is the showstoppers, right? You know whose showstopper this is, right? I can't say the name. It's a showstopper. If you spill some water on my stage, I will actually stop this show. So the showstoppers are typical those parts mentioned here. We have the hardware relations, we have the performance, we have the response time, and we have the user experience. That's basically the most common showstopper we need to think about before taking something to the cloud. So hardware relations, yeah, you have the USB device that you need to plug in to make it work. You have other types of hardware that you need to plug in to make it work. Very often it's a license plug or something like that, or it's a special card that makes it impossible to move it. So an offender, of course, hard to move. So go from a showstopper to a show. You actually need to talk with the vendor of the application, because a lot of license applications that use the so-called butt plugs will be plugs that you need to put in the back of the computer, and the application will work, right? So you need to talk to the vendor to see if they have created a virtual plug instead, and then it's no longer in that place. So then you can get an application that does it virtually for you, and problem solved. In other places, you need to upgrade. Maybe a newer version of the software will have solved the problem, because most vendors will now understand that they need to do this on virtual environment, either on your virtual environment in-house or in the clouds. Or in worst case scenario, you might want to replace or just let it stay on premise, because it's not worth to put everything in the cloud if it's expensive and it doesn't give you anything else than using more money. The next problem will be performance and response time, and also user experience. And that's the biggest mistake most company does. They actually figure out that we need to move something to the cloud. Okay, let's move the web front end to the cloud. That's a good idea because it's cheap and we don't have to think about security, and we have network load balancers. Okay, good idea. But to make sure that it works, you might consider what's the relation between some of your other data. For instance, you might have an SQL server running locally, you might have other file servers or other storage that it need to access on premise, and it's easy to set it up, but the response time will not be that great. Even with ExpressRoute, you might figure out that the database will be too slow. ExpressRoute solves some problems, but it's still not optimal for a system that need quick response. So start to monitor if you are trying this out, figure out what is the delay time that this application can manage if we are moving a part of it out of the building. So to make it work, we need to figure out what should we move to the cloud. Is it only data? Is it other servers that should be connected with it? And maybe the database. But what if we actually need the database to be available for in-house stuff as well? Of course, we can set up replication databases. So it is possible, but maybe not. You need actually to figure out, can we do it this way, that way? Is it separate systems, or do it depend on something else we have? And if it's depending on something else, can we move everything? The next thing is user experience, and we have actually already talked about the possible solution. It's actually to set up that the user can access the data no matter what by using a remote app. Azure Remote App is a great experience for the user because he can actually take whatever device he have. He can take his Surface, he can take his Apple device, he can take his Android device, and he can do what he wants. I'm just waiting for my new Philips TV to get a remote app so I can lay in bed watching TV and go in and do whatever I want. I have the keyboard, right? You have the TV, you have the keyboard. And the power in my new TV is better than in most tablets. So why shouldn't I use my TV? So it's just a matter of time. So that takes me to the end almost. Any questions?